Let me start by giving you a little history of the church that I am interning at. First of all, the church started about 4 years ago by a man by the name of Brian Talley. And so he's the pastor of this church. And what it really started as is he wanted to build a place where people can feel loved, people can feel accepted and not feel judged. Because what happened was Brian, when he grew up in the South, he grew up realizing that church is just something that you do on Sundays, but it was also a place that was all full of rules and regulations and just a lot of religiousness. And I know that we can kind of look at that word and get caught up in that word, but the idea behind it is that it wasn't a forgiving place, it wasn't a loving place, it wasn't a place of acceptance. And so what happened was Brian kind of left the church as he got into his teens. And as he left the church, he started getting into some drugs and alcohol and different things like that. And he just kind of had a really rough life for a while, got into some heavy stuff for a while. And what brought him back was really the love of Christ. And when that love of Christ brought him back, is he said, that's what I want. I want to be a part of a church that is the love of, that is Christ's love shown to people. And so that has been a very important part of Brian starting this church. That has been a very important part of Brian's heart as he shares that with other people. And so this church started about 4 years ago. Brian also runs another business called Columbia Coatings. And so that church started in his shop, in his kind of warehouse. And there was kind of a separate place where the church was meeting. They were kind of setting up. And as they were setting up, they really wanted to start to build the church and grow the church. And so they had plans to kind of retrofit this building a little bit and have half of it for the church and half of it for his business. But what they found out is when they went to the city and they started getting permits and they had to start jumping through a bunch of hoops, they found out that it was going to cost a ton of money to really fit this place, outfit this place to have church there. And so Brian was just kind of, he was up in arms. He didn't really know what to do. And so he just really started praying. And the Lord led him to the movie theater, the local movie theater. He has a friend that manages, that owns the movie theater. And so he kind of talked to him. And through that conversation, he found out that he'd be able to, that the church would be able to rent out the movie theater for a Sunday morning at a relatively decent price, and they would have the facility all morning, and so that worked out really well for Brian. And so what they did is they took the church from this warehouse location, they took it to the movie theater where they meet on Sunday mornings, and they rent that building out. And for some people, especially here in Columbia, like that's a really new idea. It's not a very common idea for churches in Tennessee to be meeting in a movie theater. But that was very important to Brian, to not have the building look like a actual church building with a chapel and all of this stuff, because he felt like people were turned off by that. He felt like people were scared by that. He felt like people went into that with a preconceived idea of what Christianity was all about, and he didn't want to be about that. And so he really set up this church to be very different. This church is made of a lot of very broken people. And that's one of the things that has drawn me to this church, that really made me say, this is where I want to do my internship. This is a church that says, hey, we want to minister to those that have kind of been turned away, that have been hurt, that have been beaten by the church in so many ways, and in so many ways they don't want to be a part of the normal church. And so that drew me in. Is just the history of this church is what drew me in. And so it's been a great place to be able to be a part of, to be able to help out, and to be able to do my internship. And so it's been a real blessing. So what I did at this church for my internship was I basically took on somewhat of an associate pastor role, which was a new role for me. See, I've grown up in the church. I've grown up working in the church. I spent about 15 years or so doing youth ministry in the church at different levels. I've been doing. I started out as a volunteer, and then I've been a youth pastor of the junior high ministry, and then I've been a youth pastor of both the junior high and the high school ministry at various churches in Southern California, and also here in Tennessee is like I said, is why I came here, is to be a youth pastor. And so when I went into doing this internship, I didn't want to focus just on the youth, because I felt like I had a lot of experience, and I had a lot of maybe know-how of knowing how to do that. I know there's still a lot that I can learn, but I wanted to try a different avenue. And so at this church, I've had the opportunity to take on more of an associate pastor role. And so what that looks like is I've had the opportunity to preach on Sunday mornings about once a month for the last 3 or 4 months, and that's been awesome. It's been a great experience. I've had a couple experiences in the past of preaching to the whole congregation, but this has really been a chance to really fine-tune some of the things that I'd be doing, some of the approaches that I would take. And so that's been a great opportunity. I've also had the blessing of still being able to be a part of the youth ministry, because the win for the church, as I looked at this internship, and I've heard so many things from other pastors about internships, is they've worried about interns coming and kind of taking, and it's been a real burden for a lot of them. And so I wanted to see, how can I give back as an intern? And so part of what I was been able to do is, Brother Brian was looking to really start a youth ministry at his church. And so I said, okay, I come on as kind of an associate pastor role, and I get to learn more of that aspect, more of the preaching, and more of the caring for the whole congregation, and more of what the programming looks like on a Sunday morning for church in general. But the win for you is going to be the fact that I will come on, and I will also kind of help and lay the foundation of a youth ministry. And so that's been what I've been also been a part of, and kind of been under my umbrella of associate pastor role there, I guess, is I've been laying a foundation for the youth ministry. And so it's been a little difficult with the holiday seasons, and we'll talk a little bit more about that when we get to that part of the presentation. But we've gone in and we said, well, let's try to start the youth ministry on let's try to start just once a month. It's going to be a new thing, and they haven't had it yet. And so let's try to start something once a month, and we'll do it on a Saturday morning once a month, and we'll see how that goes. And hopefully we'll build some momentum, and maybe we'll be able to go on and have something more consistent than once a month. And so that was part of the foundation that we're laying, and part of what we've been trying to do. The other thing that was kind of a spontaneous thing that came out of this internship is, as I've been able to get to know some of the people, and Brian's plate has been very full because he's a bivocational pastor, which means that he has this other business that we've talked about, but he also is the pastor. So he's not paid full-time from the church, but he has full-time responsibilities, as we all probably know, that ministry is not something you can really do part-time. And so he's taken on full-time pastor, more or less, and he also has a full-time business that he runs. So he's been so busy that it's been hard for him. So he's been able to delegate some of the stuff to me. And one of those things that came up spontaneously is some of the college students that have been coming. His son is a college student, and so his son started bringing some friends, and I've had a chance to build some relationships with those friends. And what we did is we actually started a Bible study on Tuesday nights that they can just come and they can just share their lives, and we can relate that to the Bible. So they come to this Bible study and they just share what's going on. They share some of the pain that they've gone through. They share some of the hurts that they've gone, some of the confusion. Maybe they share some of the passages that they've read and they just don't understand in Scripture. And for a lot of us, there are a lot of those passages. And so we've come together and we've just kind of we've kind of muscled through some of those things and worked through some of those things and really tried to dive into the Scripture and apply physically apply the scripture to our lives and see how that works. And I think it's been a great thing, because then they're able to take that home and they're able to use that application on a daily basis, and they're able to figure out, how can I apply the scripture to my life daily, as opposed to only coming on Sunday and having a pastor tell me how to apply it. It's been an opportunity for them to learn to apply it themselves. And so that's just kind of something that's come out spontaneously, which has been awesome. And I'm really excited about that and to see where that goes. And we've taken a little bit of a break for the holidays, but we're looking to get that started back up and connecting with some of them again. And what that small group does is it really gives us a chance to really build the relationships, which is what is very important to Brian. Is those relationships are what it's all about. And so those are some of the things that I've done so far at this church, and I'm looking to just do more. My interaction with the pastor or my supervisor has gone really well. Obviously my pastor, because he's wanted to build this church all about love and loving each other and not judging each other. He's a very relationable person. And so him and I have had a friendship before we went into this, and a relationship before we went into this internship. So it's been great to just be able to sit back and talk ministry. It's been great to kind of be able to kind of bounce some ideas off of each other. And it's been great to be able to work together. And some of the insight that he has shared with me is that I really need to get in there, and I actually need to get to know some of these people. I need to get to know their stories and how important their stories are. It's been so easy for me to kind of be stand back a little bit and just kind of let him do that. But he's really encouraged me to get out and get to know some of the folks. He encourages me to take some of them out to eat and get to know their lives and where they're coming from, and what their testimony is, what their story is. Because when they find out how much you care about them, and you find out how much you care about their life, they're going to be more responsive to your preaching. They're going to be more responsive to what you have to share with them. And so that's been great. The pastor has been, Brian has been very encouraging to me in doing the youth ministry. I know that as we're going to find out, there's been some ways some things that we've tried that just haven't gone too well, and he's let me know, hey, don't let that get you down. Know that sometimes you're going to try things and they're not going to work, and you may try the same thing 3 weeks later and it may work then. And he explains that sometimes it's just timing, and there's no real explanation for it, and so you can't let that kind of stuff get you down. And so it's been a great interaction. It's been a great opportunity to kind of learn from somebody that's been doing this for a while and has some great ideas, so yeah, I mean it's been an awesome opportunity to be able to interact with Brian as my supervisor, as my pastor. I really appreciate what he's done and how he's gone out of his way to kind of really mentor me through this process. He's given me some great feedback as I'm preaching, just about making sure that you leave enough time to prepare, and he's always trying to help me to see things in a little bit different light that I don't see them in, that he does see them in. And so I think him and I kind of complement each other pretty well. And so in that whole thought process of looking at Scripture and looking at Scripture in different ways, and so we're able to bounce those ideas off of each other. And so we just have a really great relationship. I mean, I couldn't ask for anything more in a supervisor for this internship than Brian.